So the number one factor that determines whether nations rise isn't wealth or even military power. It is something far simpler. Today we're unpacking South Africa's struggle to get it right, Walmart's official entry into our markets, and Ramaphosa's push for a BRICS reset, plus a couple other stories you are going to want to hear. My friends, if you're enjoying the show, be sure to like and subscribe. And now, with all that out the way, let's get into it. Okay, so best you listen up because the following is up there with the most important news stories I've covered. Did you know that only 42% of South Africa's 4-year-olds in early learning programs are prepared for grade R? That means that the majority of children entering school are already behind before they've even begun. The new Thrive by 5 index shows gaps everywhere between rich and poor, between boys and girls, between households with books and those without. And while policymakers love to argue about matric pass rates and free university, the crisis is much earlier. You see, the foundation phase itself is cracked, and it is a far bigger deal than we realized. So think about it this way. Ray Dalio, the billionaire investor who studied how empires throughout history rose and fell, says that the first and most important leading indicator for any nation's success is the quality of its education. Not GDP, not military power, but education. It's the spark that drives innovation, productivity, and everything else that follows. And some analysts point out that if South Africa is failing at the starting line of a child's education, then everything that follows is already compromised. Now, let me remind you that it's been 3 decades since democracy, yet today, fewer than half of our children can perform age-appropriate tasks at 4 years old. Now, critics don't call that bad luck, but rather policy failure. I mean, think about it. For 30 years, government has had the chance to get this right. Yet, instead of raising up a generation ready to thrive, we've chosen to undereducate again and again. And it's simply not right. So with all of this in mind, maybe the number one demand that we should be making of governments is a world-class primary education system. Because if we can't win the battle at the start, South Africa will keep losing the war at every stage after. And before we move on to our next story, I just want to say that the team at Daily Bagel feels very strongly on this matter. We want to try and raise as much awareness around South Africa's education system as we can. So please, I encourage you, drop your thoughts below. We want to hear from you. Share this with friends and family, and let's get a conversation going around this. The world's biggest retailer is finally putting its name on the door in South Africa. Walmart has confirmed it will open its first branded stores before the end of the year, promising groceries, household essentials, apparel, and tech, all at the trademark everyday low prices. Now, interestingly enough, the US giant isn't exactly new here. You see, it bought into Massmart 15 years ago, taking full ownership in 2022. That gave it full control over Macro, Builders, and Game. But in saying that, the results were mixed. Game in particular slid into decline, struggling to compete on price or relevance, while the broader group just never really dented Shoprite's dominance. So some analysts say that the Walmart brand itself is the missing ingredient. And sure, there'll be buzz at first, but the real question is whether Walmart can break through where it stumbled before. I mean, Shoprite, Pick n Pay, Checkers aren't about to roll over. And so for consumers though, more competition usually means one thing: better prices. So President Cyril Ramaphosa wants BRICS to stop firefighting and start planning. You see, at an emergency summit hosted by Brazil this week, he urged the bloc to finalize its Economic Partnership Strategy 2030, which is this roadmap to shield members from tariff wars and global uncertainty. So look, you don't have to look around to see that the timing matters. The US has slapped stiff tariffs on the BRICS countries. We have 30% on South Africa, 50% on India and Brazil, and threats of 245% on China. So yeah, retaliation is in the air, and Ramaphosa said it is costing South African jobs. Now, his pitch is to move from crisis management to strategic action by modernizing development banks, cutting non-tariff barriers, and using the bloc's collective weight to demand fairer trade rules. So with BRICS now expanded to include heavyweights like Indonesia and the UAE, the real question here is whether it can turn that size into real leverage, or if it just remains the club that talks big while the world moves on. And before we move on to our Bagel Bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, SPAR is paying roughly 680 million rand just to walk away from its Swiss business, part of its broader retreat from Europe. After billions in losses, the group says it is now refocusing capital and energy on South Africa. The Reserve Bank has seized nearly 100 million rand from alleged gold mafia operator Rappa Resources. You see, their refinery has been shut out by local banks after media reports of dodgy dealings and a pending 4 billion rand SARS tax case. An Anglo-American has sealed a mega merger with Canadian copper giant Teck, creating a $50 billion mining powerhouse. The deal boosts Anglo's copper exposure, pleases shareholders with a $4.5 billion dividend, and plants new headquarters in Canada. And on to our Bagel Bite of the day. Let's see what you got. The question is, in which year did the Berlin Wall fall? Was it A, 1987, B, 1989, or C, 1991? Bonus points if you know the exact date. And on to our wildcard section. Many South Africans don't know this, but while most countries have one capital city, we technically have three. We're the only nation in the world that splits the role, with Pretoria, Cape Town, and Bloemfontein all sharing the title. So here's how it works. Pretoria is the executive, or otherwise known as the administrative capital, home to the union buildings and the president's official offices. It's where government actually runs day to day. Now, Cape Town is the legislative capital. Parliament sits there, laws are debated, and the State of the Nation address happens on the steps of the National Assembly. And Bloemfontein is the judicial capital, seat of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the highest court until the Constitutional Court was created in Johannesburg in the 1990s. So why three? It goes back to 1910 when the Union of South Africa was formed. You see, each major region wanted influence, and so the compromise here was to spread power between them. And as for that Bagel Bite, the wall fell on November 9th, 1989. Within hours of the border opening, thousands of Berliners walked through the checkpoints freely for the first time in 30 years. And soon after, many citizens showed up with hammers and started chipping away at the wall themselves. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is your weekly reminder that if you do prefer your news on the go, whether you're running or cycling or following a Jamie Oliver recipe, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Links to both of those are either in our description below or our bio. My friends, have a great day further. Be kind to one another, and I'll catch you all tomorrow for the next round of the good stuff. Cheers.